I recognize Lia however she wants to be recognized. And Lia is a female. I think that as far as the information that I have, and as far as the emotion that I have based on a female swimmer, a biological female swimmer, I think that she should be allowed to wear, dress, act, say however she wants. But as a biological male, I don't think that we have enough information yet to allow her to compete against biological females.
Welcome to this edition of Road Trippin with RJ and Channing. I'm your host, Allie Clifton, and our guest today, super stoked. She's a two-time gold medalist. She is a world record holder. Say that 9 times fast. And she's just an overall wonderful human being. She's a friend of the show. Ariana Kukors Smith joins us. Hi, how are
everybody.
What up?
Hi, guys. This is fun.
So as you mentioned, you said that people would know you in the swim world as Ariana Kukors, of course. I want to know if Channing knows what you are a gold medalist in terms of events and what world record she held. Because Channing, we raced at one time in a pool. You and I did.
You guys did?
We did.
I smoked Allie. Allie. I grew up in Arizona. Oh, yeah. So freestyle and butterfly, it's a little easier. Freestyle, butterfly is a lot easier. Well, I grew up in Arizona. You got to have a pool. And then my wife played water polo.
That's not true, Channing. I grew up in Arizona and didn't have a pool.
Well, my bad, Richard. We happen to find something. Damn. No. And I know, right out of the gates. And then my wife played water polo for a little bit, and her whole family swims. They still swim, do meets out here in Oregon, generational meets, which is wild. Yeah, they're like, come swim for a pool. I was like, oh, how many laps? 10? They were like 10. They were like, no, 200. I was like, 200 what? I said, no, I'm cool. I'm cool with y'all. Hours they're out there.
Well, people ask me all the time. They're like, oh, so you probably still swim for fun. I'm like, I just got the chlorine out of my hair. I'm not getting back in that thing.
No.
Channing, when was the last time you played basketball?
Ooh, last time I retired? Ran up and down? Richard, I tried to play pickleball yesterday, which is obviously a lot of fun, and my calves are sore. We were playing ones, and I was out there drenched. I felt like Rafael Nadal Jackson. Put my towel on. Okay, here we go. What did you win?
I know you avoided the question, but I
no. Here we go. Let me guess. I'm gonna say.
You want to see my shoulders?
Yeah, I do need to see the shoulders. Okay. I'm gonna say you look like a sprinter. I'm gonna say I don't know the technical term. What is that? Down and back 2 times. What is that?
Oh my God. That's not good. Just go to town. Also, if you were to see my height, you would go back on the sprinter thing real fast.
Okay. Long distance. You did the mile.
The mile.
No, thank you.
Okay. The 500. Yes.
No.
Ari's a normal size
200 individual medley.
Oh, you had to do all
which
of
means
what,
what, Channing?
You got to do a lap of everything. So the breaststroke, the butterfly, the backstroke. What's the last one?
Freestyle.
Yeah, freestyle. There we go.
You forget the easiest one. Yeah. You forget the easiest one.
I just assume, right? Doggy paddle that joint.
It's so funny. It feels like a lifetime ago, though.
Yeah. When did you retire?
2012. So right after the Olympics. So I missed the Olympic team in 2008 by a fingernail, 8/100ths of a second. I was 3rd place at our trials. And then 2009 was when I broke the world record and was world champion that year. And then went through to 2012, made the team, retired after that, and 10 years ago, which is crazy. But
holy shit. I feel like I met you right after that, right?
Right after. I moved to LA in 2014. So I guess not right after. I know I was in Seattle for a little while.
Right after.
But it takes so long to figure out who you are outside of your sport. And I just remember we met at the yoga studio, and I would go and do like 2 or 3 classes. I would be at the yoga studio like all morning, and everyone was like, "Oh, do you work here? Do you like live here? What's going on?" And I'm like, "No, I'm just like an athlete." And so I just like gotta sweat.
She goes to the hottest corner, takes the hardest classes. And it's just
I still do that.
Hey, I'll see you after class.
Yeah, but those days, I mean, I'm like a once a week kind of girl. I got a baby at home now, so I'm like my namaste time. And but I mean, I think like there's that part like that I still like to sweat. I still like to get my heart rate up. And that's, I think, always going to be a little bit of part of my identity. But yeah, the racing days, but this is, and people are like, "Oh, like I said, do you swim?" I'm like, "No, because I'm competitive. And if I swim, I need to be good, and I suck." So I'm like, I ain't touching that.
What's something you discovered?
Like Channing can't even dunk anymore.
What? I can't dunk.
No,
I got to warm up though.
I didn't know you dunked when you were a player.
My ankles are locked up.
Yeah,
I dunked the other day in a vineyard. I dunked the other day. I was a little hammered, but I was good.
6 foot rim.
I still made it.
Didn't hurt.
Dude, my knees did hurt. I had no warm up jeans, Air Force Ones, which is an extra 10 pounds I don't need. It's too much, but I got it. Put it in the claw. Wait, okay. So what's one thing you discovered you love now that you've had 10 years of retirement, which really is 8?
First, athletics or just life?
Just life. Like now you have options. So like you could do whatever you want.
You got options.
You got options, which is a weird thing to say, but you know, as athletes, you're just like, I could do whatever I want.
Well, so I'm a new mom. And so for me, it's all about like getting in, getting out, concise. So I'm a Peloton girl. I did mine this morning, got my 30 minutes done. Cause like I said, I need that sweat. And so I did that. We live in LA, so I like to walk. We go on a family walk every single morning, my husband and my baby. And
every morning I've seen her
literally every morning.
I see her every morning in like where I'm going back and forth, and I just see her honk. Sometimes I don't recognize. How many people do honk at you? How many people honk at you every single day? Just because that's all I see you every day walking.
I know. Well, that's what I like about living in a small community is like you have that like connectiveness with other people, and you see people on the regular. Walked by your house today, Richard. You weren't there.
No, wasn't there. Still not done. Still going. Still building. Well, Allie, go ahead.
I just have a question kind of off of what Channing said, because I think obviously people understand in those that do not live under a rock. And sometimes that is me. So that's why I can say that. With everything that's going on in current events, et cetera, you are our first swimmer on Road Trippin. So there are a lot of things that we are looking forward to talking about and having a conversation on. But before we get there, I think too, like as much as we are closing in on the month of March, obviously International Women's Month, it's also the 50th anniversary this year of Title IX. And Channing brings up a good point. You found, or what is it that you found outside of sport, right? Since you've retired that you enjoyed doing. But I want to know how hard of a transition that was. And like what that was like for you as you kind of navigated to this new space in life.
Well, I think so much of our identity is tied up in the things that we do, you know, so it's easy to say I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm an athlete, I'm a, swimmer, I'm a this, I'm a that. And, I think when you do something for so long, you tie up your self-worth in it as well. And so when you're not touching the wall and having very concrete measurements of how you're doing at your craft that you get paid to do, it's a transition, like I don't tuck my toddler in at night and he's like, "Great job, mom. Like you crushed it today. Thanks for another, like see you tomorrow, 10 out of 10, like I like crawl out of his room. Like, oh my God, I'm so tired. Am I failing at this? And I think that's one of the beautiful things about athletics is it is so concrete. There are winners and there are losers. And I love that side of it. And I think it was a big adjustment for me to figure out how I defined success outside of the pool, how I chose to grow as a person, the work that I, wanted to dive into and learn about. And I think it's an ever evolving process. And I'm so grateful for my swimming career. I think it's one of those things that taught me so much. I think that athletics are a beautiful place because they allow you to test yourself and they allow you to suffer defeat and learn how to get along well with others. Like even swimming is considered an individual sport, but I mean, we're in the pool all day, every day with, other people. We're competing constantly. And that's why I think that the discussion we're going to have today, I think is so important just because I think that sport or any kind of activity, whether it's music, the arts, anything that allows you to test yourself and test yourself against others is incredibly valuable. And I think the lessons that you learn carry through the rest of your life. Even watching my sweet 18-month-old boy, throw little temper tantrums about what he got for breakfast, or, somebody took his favorite truck at the park. Like, I think that one of the beautiful things is with swimming, I was able to test myself on a world stage. I failed on the world stage and I succeeded on the world stage. And those are lessons that I'm continuing to learn from and that I think are really valuable for what I carry through with my life.
Tight. No, I was actually like, damn, like, I was like, man, look at all these lessons of my kids throwing spaghetti on the ground where I got to clean it up. That's a lesson. Don't give them spaghetti.
Yeah, they'll definitely. They'll definitely.
Case in point. No.
Yeah, case in point.
The other day, my kid ate ketchup for dinner, so let me just.
Dude, our kids eat butter. Oh, dude, yeah, butter sticks.
Good for him.
What? Ugh. Oh, dude, salt.
Yeah.
Kids are disgusting.
Yeah. What did my dumbass kid eat the other day? I don't even remember. Little Richard. I was like, is that what you really want to do, bro? But it's also funny when they hate on something, like they'll give them cabbage or something, and the look on their face was just utter. You know what it was? It wasn't that. It wasn't that. I went to running late to school, and didn't have time to make his breakfast or make his lunch or whatever. So I was like, hey, can you stop at Creation and just get him like some food? I was like, cool. So I go in there, I get like a little chicken. It has like pita, some hummus, and this. I get him a smoothie. You already know where this is going. I go to buy it, and it said $27. And I was just like, I didn't have $27 for an entire week's worth of lunch. And I'm buying in high school, and I'm buying this shit for my kid. Oh, yeah. I have never disliked my kids more than when I purchased it.
$27. Inflation hit y'all hard for that hummus now. That must be hand-pressed hummus.
Oh, man.
Dang.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's artisanal. Is that what the word
French.
is?
Well, what I've learned with my 18-month-old palate, and he's a pretty good eater. He likes salmon, burgers, he's a pretty good eater. But the more effort I put into something, the more he dislikes it.
Oh.
Like he literally once, he was eating breakfast and I opened the fridge and he saw something he wanted, like a sweet potato or something. He like pointed at the sweet potato, picked up his breakfast, dumped it on the floor. And I was like, all right, happy Monday.
God, it's so awesome.
It's just like so little
Ariana, what is harder? What is harder, winning a gold medal or being a mom? Raising a kid.
Ma'am.
Come on.
Ma'am? Did you say ma'am?
No, being a mom.
Oh, mama. The O sound.
We like to mess with
the O sound.
Yeah.
You guys are assholes.
I mean, there's lessons in everything, like different kind of hard. Like, trust me, some days I wish that I could just like put my goggles on and stare at a black line for like 10 hours on end. Like that sounds like the best kind of like mind numbing, just like put me back there. But motherhood's pretty awesome.
More miserable. That's
a great segue. Actually, Ariana, you don't know this about me, but I will say, because Richard, I actually do not think it's miserable. I was a Division I college basketball player. However, I swam competitively for 10 years, went to zones, et cetera. My races were breaststroke and free. Yeah. So I'm excited about this element with you as well.
I love it.
Simply too, just because swimming, it's wonderful. Yeah. It's an awesome sport. With that said, I think this is it's a great opportunity to have this conversation, to open up the dialogue and the discussion with someone like yourself, obviously, who has competed at the highest of high in this sport specifically, but with what is kind of at the forefront in the swim world especially, but reaches far beyond that, right?
Definitely.
So for those that obviously may not understand where we're going with this, just a little dropper here, Lia Thomas, obviously, who is the University of Pennsylvania swimmer, trans athlete, who now identifies herself, and Ariana, you use the word identity in so much as athletes, what we claim ourselves to be, and now claiming herself as a woman. has created some headlines, but it's much deeper than that. And I think starting off the conversation, when you see this from someone like yourself who swam from such a young age to where you are now, and have a greater perspective just of life, how do you kind of digest the conversation and what's going on?
You know, I've had a lot of conversations with my husband, especially about this. And I want to start off by saying Lia's done nothing wrong. She is completely competing within the rules that are set out presently. She has done nothing wrong. This is not about her. This is obviously creating headlines. And I think that this is an important discussion. Lia doesn't need to change anything. I am completely in support of someone living in alignment with who they truly are. Trust me, this is probably a discussion for another day, but I have fought for my life and my voice and my freedom these last few years based on something that I went through my swimming career. And as someone who knows what it's like to rip yourself in half and open yourself up to scrutiny, to speak your truth, I want Lia to live the exact authentic life that she wants. That for me is important. The headline that I wish that I was seeing was Lia Thomas competing at the men's NCAA championships. That is where I struggle with this as a biological female. And the story that kept coming to mind this weekend as I was starting to process or, kind of think about this discussion and how I wanted to handle this, because I think it's a delicate discussion, because this is a human being. These are human beings that are being affected by this. And it's easy to, comment on the way that someone lives their life. I want someone to live. I have no issues with the way that anyone wants to live their life. The issues that I'm watching and that I'm rooting for change right now has to do with how we're competing, how we're equalizing, in the sense of, I want sports to be inclusive, but I think in order for that to happen, there have to be boundaries. There's a reason why, Channing and Richard, you're not going to your son's basketball games and dunking on these kids. There's age limits. There are certain boundaries that allow sport to take place. And I think that these rules need to be taken seriously as we're trying to figure out what they look like moving forward. So the story I kept thinking of was when I was an age group swimmer. I was already pretty good from a young age. Allie, you mentioned zones. I competed at zones when I was 12 years old, and that was kind of the first real breakout meet for me. But there was this one swimmer who was about the same age as me, maybe a few months difference. And he and I used to compete constantly. And when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, I would say that I beat him more often than not, or it was pretty competitive. When we turned 12 and he went through male puberty, I never beat him again. And I think that as I was thinking about this, and as someone who's 10 years outside of competing, I would have felt that it was unfair if that swimmer had been allowed to compete at the NCAA championships or at the Olympic level. Because I saw what took place in real time as he was going through male puberty. He blew me out of the water. It wasn't even a competition anymore. And it was hard for me to watch NCAAs and see that play out in real time. Does that make sense?
Well, one thing that I want everybody, as you listen to this, understand, we are all having this discussion and everyone is putting themselves out there because, somebody might be able to take a clip and it's like, oh, you said this. No, we need to have these discussions. I am probably the least qualified person to talk on this subject from the standpoint of Allie played Division I sports. You obviously an Olympic swimmer. Channing has 3 daughters, right? These are things that impact your guys' groups and circles more than me. But I just want to make sure that people understand that we're just having a conversation. And that is something that I think is very, very important. And if in the middle of a conversation you disagree or you feel like, well, that's a certain way, it's the only way for this to truly get resolved or for this to come to a place of understanding is to have these conversations. And again, I don't know anything about zones. I know about I know about the difference when I graduated high school at 17 and I was playing against guys that were turning 19 3 months later. Right. So it's like we're all within they're 18, I'm 17, but they're going to turn that extra year that some of these individuals have. And you've seen it in men's sport. That's why it is so commonplace for people to hold their kids back so that they have a competitive advantage against kids. So they are 6 months, 8 months, 9 months older than some of the other kids within their grade, which allows them to be ranked higher, get better college opportunities, better whatever. So there, even with male sports, there is competitive. Like I said, I graduated high school at 17. I was still a McDonald's All-American chanting. I'll explain that
I ate McDonald's later,
what that is.
So
I was still, yeah. But I was 17, and I was literally playing against guys that were turning, and just the physicality, to your point, it was past puberty, but just the physicality from 17 to about 18 and a half, the way your body changes, even in that space, is huge. And so, for me, when I look at this subject, and everyone has an opinion, some of them educated, some of them uneducated. We know that Lia Thomas did not win every event. She won, one of the, I think, 3 or 4 events. So there were females that were beating her, biological females. But, Allie, you brought it up when we were talking about our discussion, and it was like, hey, she is doing so much to suppress her body, right? She's doing so much to suppress her testosterone. She's so much, but it's like, again, even in that statement, and I would, maybe the next time we'll get a doctor on here to discuss it. Even in suppressing your body, you're fighting what your body does naturally. Like if there's not a huge statement within that, like you're trying to suppress your body ideally so that you can compete and try and compete fairly, but you're still suppressing something that your body does naturally. So I understand why people have so many questions and can get frustrated about this.
I actually made some calls. I felt like, on these things, we don't really have these discussions, and it's easy for people when you just read the headlines. Obviously you read the news and you go, oh, why are they doing this? But like from what I've heard from a lot of really informed people, we have to start from the beginning, right? And you made a great point when it comes to puberty, right? So in certain states, people aren't allowed to even transition until they're 18 or out of their parents' house, or like in Texas, because their parents will go to jail. So like if a kid knows whether they're transitioning from male to female or female to male, whatever they want to do to be happy, they're almost not allowed to do that, right? So I don't know Lia Thomas's situation, but if somebody, in my question was this, if a person who was born a boy wanted to transition at a younger age before they hit male puberty, which is a big step, and they only compete in female sports, to me, as a father who has girls, I would have no problem with that person, she, whatever they identify with, competing on that level. Yes, they've had, 7 years of being a boy, but they have not competed or practiced against or fully developed in that lane, quote unquote. Hopefully I'm saying this correctly. To me, what makes it wild and needs to be not wild, but what makes it unfair is that Lia Thomas had almost 18 years of being and having that body before she started to transition, right? Which you are competing now in practice every day, how you approach yourself. If a greyhound practices with cheetahs every day and then goes and competes with greyhounds, he's going to be like, or she, or whatever the greyhound is going to say, well, I go faster anyways. And even in my thing is like, we got to make a set of rules that there's no real answer, but you can't make a set of rules that apply to everyone because there are so many individual situations in each state that are different, right? It's like, well, I couldn't transition because my parents would disown me. So I had to wait till I was 18, but I've been competing. Or I transitioned when I was 12, but I'm still 6'8". Like how do what are the right rules? But,
Well, go ahead, Allie.
I think that's where kind of I get confused as well, because reading from Lia Thomas and Ariana, I'm grateful that you prefaced with how you did in terms of she's done nothing wrong. right? Everyone deserves to own their truth and live their truth. And, you know, you read that Sports Illustrated article and not maybe having that intimidating feeling of coming out and being able to live your truth. But there was a quote in there that she said that she made this change knowing that she may never swim again. And at that point, it tells me that it's not necessarily about the sport, but it was so much deeper for her, right? It was about being able to live and live freely. And when you think about that, Channing, to like what you said, like you go back to like high school when she first felt that need, desire, want, but it wasn't until years later that she's able to fully come out and live in that way. So there are, to your point, a lot of individuals that are probably feeling it at an early age, but don't have that ability to actually recognize and then make the change and make the move early enough to what you said, Channing, where it wouldn't really make a difference in terms of before puberty, after puberty. But I guess like Ariana, like when I don't even know, I'm just going to be very candid. I don't know what the next question is in terms of like, you know, because there's just so much here. But I guess the one thing like I even took from what you said originally is why did you want it to say men's NCAA championships?
Well, yeah.
So though she's a woman now, you want her to still compete.
For me, and this is where, and Richard and Channing, I think you both were talking about, like, we all need more information, you know, like this is we're very early on in this discussion. I think that we're in the learning stage. And if there's anything, I want to constantly be evolving and learning. And I will admit I'm early on in this and I will probably say the wrong thing. And that makes me nervous. I'm nervous having this discussion because I know that there's human beings that are, you know, as topics of conversation here, and they're people and they're, you know, Lia is somebody who is fighting for her truth. And I think that's important. The question that I have is, I don't know, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. I don't know if there's a way to stop puberty. You know, I don't know what kind of chemical substances or what kind of things. As somebody, I've taken hundreds of drug tests in my swimming career. And, you know, I don't know what kind of impact that has on the body. If you can actually halt the body's natural process to go through puberty. We just don't have the answers for that yet. Allie, the reason why I said men's NCAA is I recognize Lia however she wants to be recognized. And Lia is a female. I think that as far as the information that I have, and as far as the emotion that I have based on a female swimmer, a biological female swimmer, I think that she should be allowed to wear, dress, act, say however she wants. But as a biological male, I don't think that we have enough information yet to allow her to compete against biological females. And
that's it there. That's it. We don't have enough information. And like, again, when we say enough information, that means that this information needs to be spread to the masses so that people understand. Because right now, everyone's making their own assumptions, and I don't want my daughter, and I don't want this, and blah, 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 and everyone's saying this. Well, I understand when you look at the statistics of, you know, suicide in transgender, and especially in the African-American community. One area that I think is getting lost on this is like, we also have to discuss the mental well-being of the athletes she is competing against. That one's getting completely lost in this discussion for rights and equality. And I feel like in that space, look, Elena Deladon came on here and we had a conversation about transgender. And she was like, hey, look, if you think that people are transitioning and they're going through this for a competitive advantage, you're missing the point. No one is accusing Lia of doing that. What I'm saying is that there are women like yourself. There are women that have, you know, trained their whole lives, as has Lia, and are, you know, but they have trained as biological females. And, you know, then you have Lia who, you know, trained as a biological male and then transitioned. We don't understand the competitive advantages on that. We don't understand where that goes. And the best part about this conversation is that we can have it because We weren't going to have this conversation 5 years ago. This conversation wasn't even thought of 10 years ago. So if this is the way it's trending, these conversations need to be had now so that the next 5 and 10 years, things can be kind of brought to light, or everyone as a group has an understanding, because I know that that is difficult for female athletes. And the biggest thing why I think it's a real important issue is because men aren't getting impacted by it. Men are not getting impacted. Women are not transitioning to males and then, going and having an opportunity to dominate the sport or play well. I don't care how much testosterone that you were to give a 6'8" female, right? WNBA, whatever athlete, whatever. If you just lump them full of testosterone, the bodies are built different. Their bodies are physically built different than for them to go and say, oh, well, if we just gave them testosterone treatments and had them transition to a male, they would be able to play in the NBA. It's like, nah, that shit ain't simple. It ain't that simple. Like, your body's going to do whatever it is that it does, but like, it's not going to all of a sudden give you the quick twitch fibers. It's not going to do all the things that men generally have more of. And I think, again, without, I'm not a doctor, I would imagine that conversely the other way is that if you were a male transitioning to a female, no matter how much estrogen that they pump inside of you, right, there's still going to be some actual physical differences. Because you have been a male for X amount.
Well, and
one
thing that, I was actually thinking of, just a brief point on that too, is women get their period every month. And, that's just a part. Biological women get a period every month. And that affects some women in a different way than others, and the way that it affects our performance, the way that our body is processing that. And, this is so hard. And even listening to you talk about mental health and suicide rates makes me want to cry, just because I feel like this is such a sensitive topic. I feel like this is so important to have these discussions. I have a sweet little 18-month-old boy who I hope to bring into this world with empathy and compassion for the way that other people are, the way that other people live. And I hope that I have enough clarity in myself and my words so that he knows that no matter what he chooses to do in this life, that I will love him no matter what. That is the basis of the way that I am approaching this conversation, the way that I hope that Lia is supported and so many others, because at the end of the day, sports are amazing. They're great, but it's just sports. I retired 10 years ago. I'm not still thinking about my glory days, there were
do sometimes.
There's some good days that we can all reflect back on. I'm like,
I do.
Behind me, we're in our office and these are my husband's diplomas. You won't see anything.
Richard, where's your diploma?
In our house, which is hilarious.
Where's my diploma? I got drafted after my junior year, and so
learning is cool, Richard.
Decided to take my talents to.
Well, I think. Oh, go ahead. Yeah. No, you go.
Yeah, no, go. No, I can't even remember what I was talking about, other than this is important. The mental health component is also monumentally important. We don't have enough information. This should be a continuing discussion. And I hope that, it's so funny because when I say it in my head, I say something like, well, it's not fair. It's like, life's not fair. You know what I mean? Like, we all know that there are some people who are 7 feet tall and some people who are 5 feet tall. Like, there are certain genetic factors that make somebody better than the other. And I think that that's an important thing, but it's just hard. Like, this is a hard conversation. And then I would be lying if I said it wasn't emotional watching NCAAs and really feeling so much empathy and compassion and also admiration for Lia, for the fact that she stood there and in her interview after her race, she said, I'm just trying to block out the noise and compete. That's what she wants to do. And when she transitioned, she didn't know if she'd be able to compete again. So what a gift for her to be able to compete. I'm assuming she's retired after this. I'm not really sure. I don't think she's made any kind of announcement. I don't think she has any more college eligibility. But that's another discussion where it's like, okay, you get a certain amount of years of eligibility. Does she get more now? Is she or those are more rules and more discussions that I think need to be taken into account of, okay, she only competed for 1 year as a female. Does she get 3 more?
I don't know, but I think, go ahead, Allie.
No, you're good.
No. I was literally going to ask the the dad on the chain, right? Like you have 3 daughters and you understand like what, teaching them to be strong, powerful women, giving them voices, enabling them. Look, I know your wife and I know she's going to do 99% of that, but like you do have a 1%, you do have a 1% to add to that. So it's like, what are these conversations? Have you, again, I know you're so far away from even remotely having those conversations, but like, how do you think those conversations will go with your daughters when they go to ask you that question? Because there's a lot of people that are not even open-minded enough to have this conversation openly.
I think first, right, in any situation, especially like this, you're going to have your initial reaction based on your bubble, based on like how you live and who you're around. And I'm not around a lot of trans people, and people in that community. And that's not a choice. It's just, because of COVID, I just been here. But for me, thinking about, like, and I'll go back to this, is we were like, maybe Lia should have competed versus the men, but does she have extra security? And like, as much criticism as she's getting now, imagine if she had beat the boys. What does that do? Like, people would have been even more mad. And then we talked about their like psyche. What does that, and as ignorant as people are in this country, right? What happens to her in that situation? Where does she go to a separate locker room? Is she like, we're so at the beginning stages of this, and it is uncomfortable for everybody, but you can't make the correct decision or have these conversations if you don't think about that situation. So who is she supposed to compete with where not only feels safe, but like, again, if she just ready to compete, everyone wants to compete and be good, but nobody, like Richard said, nobody's doing this. Nobody's transitioning so that they can win NCAAs. They're like, I just need to be happy. And it just so happens that I do this and I'm getting allowed to do that. And so when I talk to my girls about competition, they got to run their own race. Like, I only played 2 years of high school basketball and I played all 4 years of college. Right? So high school varsity basketball. So like, then I went 4 years of college, I made the league. But like, if Richard saw me when I was 14, if you would have told Richard when I was 14, will this kid make the NBA? You would have said, hell no. But all of a sudden I started to develop. Huh?
You were already bigger than you already.
Yeah, I was taller. Yeah, but I was like 110 pounds. But again, everyone has to run their own race. And there's no right answer, but until we get in that situation, and until we have to address it, we need to get all the information from each side and deal with it individually, since there are no across the board rules, whether that's each state, whether that's NCAA, whether that's saying, hey, if you transition and it's after puberty, you can compete, but at this level. And then if you are a biological boy or girl, you get to be on the highest elitist level, because you've done that through the ranks. Now, I don't know if that's correct or whatever, but I think that would satisfy your need for competition, but it would allow you to say, hey, you are a biological woman. You've done this for this long and you are rewarded for that. You are the best at your thing, and male, you're the best at your thing. For right now, I don't know the rest, how else to explain it, because this is one time. I'm 38. This is one time this has happened. And the problem is that she won, which is the awful part. If she had never won, if she had just been, 20th or 15th, people would have said, okay, no problem.
My thing too, like for you, Ariana, is like being in the swim world, in space, and understanding what that grind is like. What is your advice to swimmers now, those that may be around her, maybe not? What is it that you hope to see come out of this, along with the discussions and the conversations and the change?
Well, Channing, you made such a good point, and that really made me check myself when you said that you tell your girls to stay in their own lane. And I think that that's so important. And I remember when I was young, I used to get second place a lot to one swimmer in particular. And my mom always used to say, on any given day, anyone can win. And I'm not saying it. No, I'll say it. Her name's.
See, there we go. You were second to an Olympic gold medalist. Oh, darn.
Yeah, tell us her name. No. See, the competitive part of her won't allow her to give her credit. It's not that she doesn't like the person. She just like, okay. Because I would never. I still say fuck Duke any chance I get. Duke is the team we play.
Who is the swimmer? Who is the swimmer?
Duke is the team we play in the Final Four, Channing.
Her name is Katie Hoff. She's amazing. We're actually like, our birthdays are like 3 months or 3 days apart. And I remember when I was younger, I used to break like national age group record on the West Coast to find out that she'd broken it 3 hours before on the East Coast. She grew up in Maryland, but we ended up eventually training together, and she's amazing. She's done incredible things for the sport. But it's interesting when you think about the things that you can control. This is like the human experience. Control what you can, leave the rest. Like, what's the point in like worrying about things that you can't? What's interesting, as I'm watching this, and I talked to my husband all weekend, and I was like, do I say anything? Like, do I have anything to say that's of value about this conversation? What would I wish the conversation sounded like if I was still competing? If I was the person that got second, third, fourth, if I was the person that got ninth and left out of the final, or the one who got 17th and got left out of the competition, what do I wish the conversations being had were about? And I think that's what today is about, is having open discussions so that we can hear other perspectives, the way that we're all learning from each other right now, or be able to gather information from other people. And, maybe the next discussions are with doctors or scientists or people who are adding their voice in that way. But I think for me, when I think of how it would feel to get second place to Lia at NCAA championships, I have to say that I would say, based on my current knowledge, that it would feel unfair. And it just take the swimmer that I competed against when I was younger. I would feel sad. I would feel upset. And Richard, you brought up a good point about the mental health component. As somebody who has had a lot of therapy in their day, I feel pretty educated to speak on this. Like, I'm not kidding. For the last 4.5 years, I've had therapy almost every single week. And I value mental health. I value somebody living in alignment with who the heck they say they are. Because for me, and I'm going to get passionate about this because I feel that Lia and others need to hear, like, hell yes, be whoever you want to be. Like, that is what I want to instill in my child, is like, whatever you want to do. Am I allowed to cuss on this podcast?
It's way too early.
Like, yeah. We normally get drunk. It's just
a little early. Call me back this afternoon when it's early. But I'm like, what I want to yell to Lia is like, you do you, girl. Like, fuck yes. Like, who cares what you're competing. I love it. Be you. But the little girl that's next to her, not a little girl, a grown woman, like, I also feel like I need to say, like, are you okay? Like, this feels unfair right now. We don't have enough information about if you should have won or not. And that makes me sad. That breaks my heart, because I know how important these moments in time are. I also think that the people who are left out are going to learn some valuable lessons from this if they have the community and support around them to learn the lessons about themselves and how they feel. Like, the human experience, this is just a freaking playground. We're all trying to figure out how we feel when someone pushes us over, how we feel when we get tested, when we succeed. Are we good winners? Are we bad winners? What does that look like? I remember my mom always used to say, like, if you're not happy with your race, don't you dare throw your goggles. Don't you dare throw your swim cap. Like, you save that conversation for at home. Like, you will shake that person's hand and you will exit the pool deck. And there were plenty of times that I had extreme disappointment and I had to go deal with that on my own. I had to go learn hard lessons on my own. And I hope for the athletes now that they feel safe with the people around them to have those discussions, to be able to say, like, I think such a huge part of mental health is being able to, like, say things as they are. Like, I don't feel like this is fair right now. I feel sad. I feel angry. So, like, having a toddler, you know what I mean? I'm like, my son's name is Whitaker. I'm like, hey, bud, I get that you're angry right now. Like, you're allowed to feel anger. You are not allowed to hit mommy at Target. Like, you know what I mean? Where it's just like...
Yeah, Phoenix was a puncher. Phoenix was a scratcher, a face scratcher. He would do that to you. Go,
but
like,
this is like a big discussion, and I think this is even outside of this kind of discussion, where it's like, naming your feelings, being able to be okay with how we feel rather than suppress things. And that doesn't mean you can be a bully. That doesn't mean that you can, like tear others down. I think that we can approach every conversation with empathy and a willingness to understand or at least listen to someone else's perspective. I don't live in Lia's life. I don't live in her body. I don't know what it's like to be her. I don't know what it's like to be her teammate or her mom or her dad. I have no idea. But what I can do is have open discussion. I can try to put myself in someone else's perspective. I can feel compassion for the journey that they walked to get to where they are. And I can try to do better next time. That's all I'm doing right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, you got to. It does.
Emotional
As competitors, it does give you an emotion.
I know, but that's okay. Just for full disclosure, this is no lie. I think Lia won the night before, and the next day I go into the yoga studio. Allie's there. I think Allie and I have had a discussion. I hadn't seen you in a couple months other than just on the drive-bys. I hadn't seen you in the studio. And so I see you in the studio and you're like fired up, not in a mad way, but just in like, there's just too many questions. I just don't understand. Like you were very sympathetic for all of the people that just didn't understand and were confused. And you were like, look, I get it. And so I was like, we got to talk about this. And we understand that we are entering into a very delicate space. And that's why we're having conversations about it in a very delicate way. It's because imagine I'm not going to say for certainty, but let's play this game. The women that were competing against her in the finals that she won, she did have other races that she lost, in the finals that she won. Do we think that their friends and family, do you think that they were saying positive things like, hey, good job, you'll get them next year, champ? Or do you think that they were saying negative things about Lia Thomas? Most likely negative. So we can just say the energy when you talk about asking that girl, are you okay? Asking the girl that got second or fourth off the podium or ninth and didn't get, like, are you okay? How are you feeling about this? Because you can't say fuck somebody's feelings when you're going through the human experience. They're dealing with something that no females before them in the swimming world have had to deal with, a male transitioning while in college. We need to make sure that they are okay. Also, It's not just Lia.
I think we all have a responsibility as a society. You can take it even more singular in terms of the NCAA, the swim world, however you want to look at it. But
NCAA, nobody fucking trusts them. They're the fucking worst.
But as we've done our research and we continue to sit here, one other thing that kind of arose in my reading was, the future and what's next. And if you continue or do not choose to have these conversations that we are having, if the NCAA does not put in the work to figure this out,
which they won't,
that it's done right, it's not going to change for the future, and it's not going to change for the future of women's sports. And that's scary. Yeah. And that's a place that obviously we cannot enter. And you don't want that, because as you guys talk, Channing, especially you, 3 girls, you don't want that for your children, and so kudos to you as a dad for being uncomfortable and not feeling, the jolly-go-lucky man that we know here on this podcast every day, but you stepped into this territory to have the conversation. Ariana, to sit with us and be so candid and everything with your experiences. And Richard, someone who says you're very unqualified. You have a lot to say and you do your homework, and we all have a place in it. And I think that just to have this conversation was important. And I'm glad we took the time to do so.
I knew.
So with that said, if there's anything, take a shot. It's a game.
Take a drink.
Is there anything that we could still add to this? Is there anything that we left out? Anything that you want to say, Ariana, in terms of this that we didn't cover?
Well, I think just with Richard, when we ran into each other the other day, it was emotion filled. And I think like multiple times during this discussion and even over the weekend, I felt like I've wanted to cry just because it feels like an overwhelming discussion that needs to take place, because I can see every perspective. And I want to be able to see every perspective. I want to be better educated. And there are so many components to it. I feel deeply for Lia and I feel deeply for her competitors. And I hope that we can find a way forward that feels fair. I don't know what that path forward looks like. And I think that that's scary, in a way that is hopefully exciting, in a way that hopefully opens dialogue to have these kinds of conversations, not only around sport, but mental health. I think that the last 2 years, just to kind of bring it back to everyone, we can all relate to what it feels like to try to find out who on earth we are. Try to live in alignment with that, have no idea who we are, feel isolated, changing like what you were saying earlier, like we're all in our little bubbles right now. And I think that we all have this responsibility to break outside of that. And myself included, that was one of my hesitations about going on this podcast, was saying, I like my anonymity right now. I like just being a mom who goes to yoga once a week and, getting to have passionate conversations with my husband about this. But I, as a former swimmer and as, now a parent, I think that this conversation needs to be had. I wanted to come on here and be transparent and say things that might not be the popular opinion, because for so long, and I know, like what it's like to be an athlete where you kind of don't want to say anything. You don't want to be the outspoken one. You don't want to be the complainer. You don't want to be the one bitching about everything. Like, I get that. But I feel this responsibility now to just highlight what might not seem fair in the situation so that we can better understand how we can make things fair moving forward.
And only you can do that because you're the swimmer of our crew. So we're so glad to have you on. Okay, well, I will properly close this episode
Thank you.
out. Ariana, you are wonderful. Again, thank you so much for taking the time spending with us. We'll have you on and we'll dive into so many more fun things as well. But this is obviously a very important conversation. If you are a fan of Road Trippin, please rate, review, subscribe. You know what to do. Call us, leave us a text, 657-5-CALL-RT. That is our number. That'll do it for this edition of Road Trippin.